Hi, good morning. This is Shankar Swaminathan from Mississauga, Toronto. I had the opportunity to watch Barkadit's interview with Deepika Padukone on NDTV on the topic of depression and mental health. I watched it with a lot of interest, as much as millions of viewers all over the world must have watched it. As a mental health counselor employed with a well-known non-profit organization in this part of the world, besides being in part-time personal practice for almost close to a decade, the subject was of very great interest to me. I am happy to observe that the issue is drawing a lot of attention in India at the moment. I must also say that I was truly impressed with the fact of a celebrity like Deepika Padukone willing to come into the public domain to talk about it, propelled possibly by her excellent instincts and idealism to talk about this um, for basically the benefit of the community at large. Uh, in her position, it's really very difficult to do that. We should acknowledge that. Without an iota of doubt, it does help a lot when celebrities do come up into the public domain to take up and advocate on the social issues and causes. Unfortunately, we do not seem to have many celebrities doing so. I also had a chance to read a response to Deepika's interview written by Reshma Valliyappan, one with a lived experience. The write-up is indeed powerful from the point of view of the reader, and is truly a cry in despair at the naivety of the vast majority of people in general, shall I say. I only felt she could have avoided the term schizophrenic, which is considered to be disrespectful in certain quarters, particularly by professionals. I was also truly astounded when Barkadit gave out the figure of 36% out of the Indian population affected by the mental health issues. I really have no reason to be skeptical coming as it does from Barkadit, very seasoned professional and a celebrity in her own right. I'm pretty sure that she would not have been casual with this kind of declaration. The learned psychiatrist who took part in the program said that the issue is likely to become an epidemic if it is not taken care of and with the seriousness that it deserves. But I'm left wondering, at 36%, it has already become an epidemic. India has a population of about 1.25 billion, and 36% means it's almost about 40 crores of people have been affected by mental health issues, which is by any yardstick an astounding figure. It used to be said that Canada has about 20% of the people affected by mental health issues. I used to be shocked even with this figure, but it just amounts to about 70 lakhs, taking into account the fact that Canada has a population of about 3.5 crores. But now, when I compare it with what the conditions in India, it really appears to be a very negligible number. In any case, whatever be the number in India, Canada, and anywhere else, we simply have no choice but to accept the reality that of the mental health issue being widely prevalent. But what is just not acceptable is the apathetic manner the issue seems to be handled in some countries, particularly India, which is of primary interest to me. After watching the program, I do get an impression that there is no great awareness in India, nor people are really truly concerned about this mental health issues. When I say country, please don't get me wrong, I certainly do not refer to the people. I just mean the system, government, governance, and people in positions of power who can take appropriate decisions. What is the use of a country developing in economic terms, in terms of GDP, per capita income, huge foreign exchange reserves, rate of inflation, etc., if the social issues are not being taken care of, which actually means that the country is really not enlightened to the true sense of the term. But this is the unfortunate reality right now. Governments and societies, particularly in the developing world, should have their priorities right. People take umbrage when a Nobel laureate like Amartya Sen keeps raising such issues, but one must put in efforts to understand the spirit behind his lament. His pet subject of developmental economics is all about placing emphasis on right priorities to ensure that the basic needs and wants of the poorest or the poor are fulfilled before looking at other aspects of development, however important they are. I know I'm actually digressing here, but this looking at the big picture, I think it's really very important to understand a little bit of economics and the cause that has been exposed and talked about so vigorously by people like Amartya Sen. Ironically, I do feel that socialism is best practice, better practice at least in spirit, in these so-called developed countries, in terms of attention paid to the minutest details concerning the welfare of the poverty-stricken. The governmental welfare programs which make sure that the poorest of the poor are taken care of in terms of welfare, disability support, old age security, complete free medical aid are all absolutely amazing. Mind you, the poverty levels that they are actually talking about here is absolutely nothing. It is in no way can be equated to what prevails in India. To give you an idea, anyone earning less than $27,000 per annum is considered to be poor in this country and would qualify for all kinds of privileges as I actually mentioned above. All of these are not just being doled out by the government as a privilege, trying to look down upon people who are deprived. The spirit with which these things are given out is truly admirable. The genuine rightful claims of the disadvantaged to have access to such benefits are very much recognized. The underlying principle is that no one deserves to be deprived of the basic essentials, food, clothing and shelter, and that includes those who are not smart enough to find a job or who are simply incapable of working, even if they get one. See, that is where a program called ODSP, Ontario Disability Support Program, is there to help out people who are basically disabled. So talking about mental health, let's see how the system here handles these issues. For a start, non-profit sector now is recognized as another industry such as banking, etc. There is a huge amount of funding allocation by various ministries to provide financial support to various non-profit organizations engaged in service to the disadvantaged of various types. Thousands of non-profit organizations exist here with hundreds of trained workers, social workers, counselors, mental health workers, settlement workers, child and youth workers, women's counselors, crisis workers, etc. And these people very effectively and competently discharge their functions, which is to take care of the deprived and the disadvantaged. This has to be seen to be believed. A whole team of professionals, in the case of mental health, a whole team of professionals which include a psychiatrist, social worker, hospital nurses in some cases, case workers, counselors function as a team providing support to the client. In the case of certain chronic cases, there is something called ACT program or Assertive Community Treatment Program. Under this program, a case worker visits a client at home at least once in a week. A nurse visits the client at home to provide medicines on a day-to-day basis and ensures that the client take the medicines. A social worker, counselor is always available on hand at the hospital to handle any crisis situation at a very given short notice at any time. Periodical reports are sent to the psychiatrist to make sure that the client's condition is stable. Psychiatrists also have the authority to order admission of the client to the hospital in case something is not found satisfactory. He could even order the police to help take the client to the hospital just in case the client is found to be resistant, which is not too uncommon. Similarly, there are several programs to take care of those affected by mental health issues, including those who get caught in legal tangles. If there is a will, there is a way. So the saying goes. Let no one come up with the excuse. Making a comparison, when I actually talk about Canada or the conditions prevailing in the developed world, we will be tempted to give this excuse that in a poor country like India, these things are just not possible to implement. That is far from reality. India is a country with $1 trillion economy. In a country with so many billionaires, something is not quite right if it is not possible to find solutions to vital social issues affecting the lower middle class and poorer sections of people in particular. People with means can always go to the private hospitals, but there may be so many of the Indians belonging to the lower and poor lower middle class and poorer sections of society going through this suffering with vast majority of people not even knowing of its existence. Is it not revolting to see that the government allocates hundreds of lakhs of crores towards defense allocation to meet some imaginary threat, but setting apart just a minuscule percentage of its budget provisions in relative terms towards social issues and causes? Even if 1/10 of the budgetary allocation that is actually made for the health sector is set apart for the mental health, that may be quite significant, improve the conditions of the people very significantly. It's not it's perhaps not very popular to talk about subsidies, welfare measures, etc. in India presently. Take a cue from the amount of money spent on such measures in the capitalist countries, you will find nothing wrong about it at all. There is just no gainsaying the fact that everything has to be on merit. Well, nothing wrong with that intrinsically, but there are people bound to fall by the wayside by that principle, and they do have a need to be taken care of by the government for at least their basic needs and wants, which is the practice in these advanced countries, advanced economies. Now again talking about mental health, can you guess the budgetary provision for mental health in India? It's a pittance. Just hold your breath. Considering the importance of the issue, this amount is just very negligible. It is less than 1/10 of a percentile of its total health budget in India. As a percentage of GDP, it is already among the lowest globally on mental health. I just happened to read this in an internet, and I have no reason to believe that it's not authentic. So much for the aspirations of our country to developed status. We do aspire for it, but developed status is not going to come if you are not going to take care of your social issues, if you are not going to take care of the poorest of the poor in the country. Is it not a reflection of the ostrich-like attitude of those holding the reins of power, not willing or able to see the reality and focus on some of the burning issues? Consider the seriousness with which the Canadian system deals with this issue. I am repeatedly citing the Canadian conditions just to highlight the issue or perhaps highlight the lack of attention that is there in India. It's only there as a comparison. It's not, the idea is basically not to look down upon India, basically, but just to be very objective in your evaluation. Let me assure you that the approach of the Canadian government system and the society in general is equally benevolent, dealing with all the social issues, and no one grudges the money spent for such causes, though the rate of tax is around 35% for some sections, but nothing less than 15% for anyone. 1/5. The extent of care and the seriousness with which the issues of mental health is treated is best reflected by the amount of funding allotted for the subject by the federal government, particularly the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, as mentioned earlier. It's not just the government that demonstrates so much of concern. The huge non-profit agencies such as United Way, etc., do a mighty job of collecting funds and setting them apart for programs serving the mentally ill. There is no dearth of good Samaritans in India. In fact, some of them serve the poor and downtrodden very admirably, with very great commitment, at considerable personal sacrifice to themselves, spending money out of their own pocket sometimes. In fact, mostly. Admirable as they are, the roles played by the individuals and some non-profit organizations, considering the magnitude of the problems and the gravity of the situation in India, it is simply stupid, if I may say so, to expect that these NGOs would be able to fulfill the needs of all the deprived and the disadvantaged in India, with particular focus on mental health. At best, NGOs could draw attention to issues and nothing more significantly. That's why the governments, both in center and states, have to step in with great vigor and commitment to address the social issues and causes and provide succor to the disadvantaged. Only the governments with its mammoth infrastructure will be able to fulfill the needs of the masses. It is true that it is incredibly more challenging in the Indian conditions as any service that needs to be provided has to be provided to a 1.25 billion populace. Unlike in a country like Canada, with geographical sizes multiple times that of India, with vast natural resources, and where the population is just about 3.5 crores, or in Australia, where the population is just about 1.7 crores, I think. I think Australia is around 3 times the size of India, if not more. The government's earnestness on dealing with such issues can best be demonstrated by the amount of funds allotted for such issues in the budget and the follow-up measures taken up in terms of setting up the infrastructure, etc. Successive governments do not pay enough attention to issues such as mental health, not out of acts of deliberate omission, but more due to a lack of enlightened appreciation of the issues on their part. They do have any number of pressing issues, but that's not to minimize the importance of issues like mental health. You should not be in a position where a celebrity like Deepika Padukone has to come out into the public domain to explain these things. What's the government doing? Will it wake up only when a celebrity come out and talk about it in open, advocating social causes? That should not be the situation at all. No welfare government is expected to adopt such an attitude. So in dealing with issues of mental health, the Indian government has to take cue from the Western world and establish facilities and infrastructure under the auspices of government to provide the best possible treatment and care to those suffering from mental illness. Seldom have government-sponsored health institutions run successfully in India, living up to their optimal potentials. This can be on account of any number of reasons, but it needs to be looked at. This leads to the commercialization of the health in private sector, with the best possible facilities in existence, but to which the poor and the lower middle class cannot afford access. The governments of the day should take it upon themselves to spearhead actions on social issues such as mental health issues and, in fact, the overall health in general. It may not be realized, but attention to such issues is bound to increase the productivity of the country by leaps and bounds. Health is wealth, again, so the saying goes. So that would actually explain everything. Going by the experience of the Western world and the direction in which India proceeds at the moment, in terms of desperate materialism and consumer economy, without a respite, the problem of mental health is bound to worsen further, with very few having the capacity to appreciate it for what it is. I strongly urge the Indian community of mental health professionals, including psychiatrists, psychologists, psychotherapists and others, to come forward, organize themselves effectively, and to exert enough pressure on the government, both at the federal and provincial central and state levels in India, to be adequately seized of the situation and act. Globalization and liberalization is a reality. The reality is that resorting to globalization and liberalization ceaselessly is bound to lead to such psychological issues, as it is never possible for individuals to be truly satisfied if they cannot distinguish between the needs and the wants. The wise dicta that contentment is the ultimate key to happiness has been completely lost sight of. It seems it's not fashionable to be wise or talk about eternal truths these days. Something which is not easily understood by the average person is dismissed, ridiculed and made light of. The average middle class has neither patience nor time to be wise and seems to be completely consumed by their desires, wants and the materialistic aspirations. People do complain about rat race, but do not pause to think why at all they have to be in that race. The reality being what it is, that not everyone can have everything for whatever reason. This is bound to cause disillusionment and disappointment, leading to mental health issues as well. There can be any number of reasons for mental health issues. These are not the only ones. I'm just not going into those aspects in detail. But the economic policies and the economic realities can also have a bearing on mental health issues, which is what I actually want to explain here. It is not so much as not accomplishing something that seems to lead to mental health issues such as depression, mood disorder, etc. But the process of engaging towards such an exercise that causes intense psychological pressure and stress with no avenues or scope to seek relief. Such issues have always been in existence in the Western world. Um, that's a reality. But the saving grace has been that the system and the government have taken care to come up with measures to take care of those who fall by the wayside. In India, the reality is much worse, with the social and economic dichotomy that is there, along with the inequitable distribution of wealth ever since independence possibly, the unrealistic aspirations of the middle class, particularly the lower middle class, losing sight of established conventional social values adds up to the situation. The result is that the healthy development and psyche of people is bound to be the casualty. Unless the system and the governments wake up soon enough, it will not be possible to avoid a situation where serious crisis on mental health is going to be a reality. However much one wishes that it were not so. No one talks about it, no one listens to it, no one sees it. So where is the crisis except for those who are affected? If the choice is to turn a blind eye and live in a fool's paradise, so to say, who can help? But then we would not qualify to be described as being any better than one of those banana republics of Africa, such as Mozambique and all that, where they have $1 billion currency, etc., which is just meaningless. Anyway, but it is where the role of mass media is of crucial importance, bringing to the center stage for discussions issues such as mental health, etc. Truly praiseworthy is the initiative shown by NDTV and Deepika in particular. Hopefully, more celebrities would be inspired enough to take up social causes for advocacy, mental health issues, etc. Mental health issue is just not the least in that sense. It's not the least important in that sense. It's possibly one of the most important ones that needs to be talked about in great detail in India at the moment. It is high time that the governments wake up to the reality of the time bomb on mental health to contain the galloping epidemic, so to say. Thank you very much for watching and listening. We'll keep talking about it. We'll try to do our bit to highlight issues such as mental health and other social issues and causes. Once again, my thanks to Deepika Padukone, NDTV, Prakatat, for taking the initiative to highlight the issue such that it motivates people like me to do whatever little that we can. Thank you very much. Have a great day.